My name is McLoughlin. I'm currently the director of product at MoneyLion. I founded a company back in 2017 that ultimately got acquired.
What was the thing that led you to going from working at a job at an architecture firm, potentially, to actually jumping off and doing your own thing?
My background is actually in a whole different space. And I think that's really interesting for anyone who gets into product is that there's no traditional route.
What was your first true entrepreneurial venture past these property projects?
Diggs was a savings app for first-time homebuyers where you could save for a home in a dedicated FDIC-insured savings account. And as you were putting away money, we would spoon-feed you information about closing costs and how to buy a home, and you would earn rewards. We would partner with mortgage lenders who would then give those rewards back to you when you're ready to buy a home. The lenders themselves, they actually were interested in white labeling our product.
How did you keep from being a custom development shop for each bank?
We decided to gray label instead of white label.
We went from humanitarian work to nonprofit to starting the for-profit to first product bootstrapped to second product seeing scale, getting ready to think about raising, but also ultimately deciding this is the time to actually go through acquisition. We see that acquisition take place, and then you've been with this company for 4 years and just recently have transitioned. That's a wild ride. Hey, Pat, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. I'm going to throw it straight to you. Why don't you do a real quick introduction of yourself and your story, a little bit about you?
Yeah, definitely. My name is McLoughlin. I'm currently the director of product at MoneyLion, leading their marketplace product. So I'll get into more of that during the show, but a little bit of background on me is I'm a previous founder. I founded a company back in 2017, a fintech company that ultimately got acquired. A lot of stuff we'll talk about on the show, but been bouncing around and been really kind of excited to really plant my roots in the product space. And prior to that, my background is actually in a whole different space. And I think that's really interesting for anyone who gets into product is that there's no traditional route. My background is in architecture. That's what my degree is in. I got into real estate for a while. I bought and sold some buildings. I own some still today. And actually, all of that journey has kind of led me to where I am today. And I think that that's really what the conversation that we'll be talking about is about to, start.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that. Before you founded your first company or before you were part of that first journey, you said you were doing architecture. What was the impetus? What was the thing that led you to going from, working at a job at an architecture firm, maybe potentially, to, actually jumping off and doing your own thing?
Yeah. So I actually never was an architect. My degree is in architecture. I was really, very interested in architecture really my whole life. Really the idea of designing something, building something physical. And so that's why I got into architecture. 4 years of architecture school, loved it, made a lot of lifelong friends there. My wife's an architect, so I can't get away from it really. But ultimately I didn't become an architect because when I graduated, it was right around the 2010, it was 2010. And so it was right around when things were not good, the housing crash, and architects did not have a lot of job opportunities. So it actually forced me, and I look back on this, fortunately it did, to look at other options. And so one of the things that I did is I did a year with AmeriCorps, which if you're not familiar with it, it's like, I would say it's like the Peace Corps in America. So I actually was a construction coordinator working on doing renovations for low-income housing.
Wow. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And so when I did that, I started to kind of really become interested in managing the projects instead of designing the projects. And so for several years after that, I was working in construction management. And that's when I started to actually, buy my own buildings, renovate them. And I learned a lot during that process, which actually indirectly led me to starting my own company.
So, okay. So interesting. So you're doing construction, you're project managing, you're buying your own properties, which in some ways is in and of itself an entrepreneurial journey of deciding where's the risk to be taken, which property should I invest in? Am I going to get a return on this? Is this thing even salvageable? All the way into what was your first true entrepreneurial venture past these property projects?
Yep. So my co-founder and I, his name's Chad Johnson. He and I were old college roommates, very close to this day. He was more in the design tech space. I was more in this real estate. I guess you could also kind of tie my humanitarian roots to AmeriCorps. And we decided to start a company that was building homes in developing countries. So what we did is we partnered with, it was a nonprofit, and what we did is we partnered with NGOs in developing countries like Haiti and Nepal, Thailand, Costa Rica, Guatemala, just to name a few. And we created this program that really allowed anyone to find a way to travel to one of these countries, volunteer for a week or multiple weeks, and also explore kind of, a lot of these countries have some beautiful things to do and
Yeah.
see. So that country was our, or sorry, that country, that company was our first venture. But it was a nonprofit. So like, didn't get VC funding,
The
really
goals are
bootstrap.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very much. And that was like a really, really rewarding experience in multiple ways. Obviously, a feel good project to work on, but at the same time, like really seeing how we could build something from nothing. We like are like, to this day, you could Google our company. It's Build Abroad, like very, very simple to understand. We would build homes in developing countries, and like we got a lot of people finding us, a lot of people signing up. Email list was just growing, and that was really kind of cool to see that I could do something like that. So him and I started to talk about like, well, what if we did a for-profit company,
Mm.
and what would that look like? And
Yeah.
so we already knew that we worked really well together, so we used that as like, okay, cool, we can do this again. And we decided like, what is it that we both know a lot about? And we kept coming back to like the fact that I had already bought and sold and renovated multiple buildings, and a lot of my friends were just asking me like, hey, how did you do this? How did you like save 20% for a home? And I kept having to tell them like, I didn't. I actually put like 3 or 5% down on a home. I got this type of, and so there was like a lot of lack of knowledge around buying and selling property that we thought there was an opportunity there.
So, okay. So from your nonprofit work, then it sounds to me like you were able to kind of one, build trust with your co-founder. So to learn how to work together, learn how to partner with somebody to actually start something. Two, it sounds like you had a really clear purpose. Like you knew why the organization exists, which is a big factor, whether you're a founder or you're on a team or you're building a product, is like, if you don't have a clear purpose, nothing's going to get done. Right. And then ultimately, then you have an execution plan. So you're able to go through and actually execute on that. So what did you take as you went from the nonprofit into the profit world and you started to create this new business? What was that transition like, going from this very, I don't want to say altruistic, but like this nonprofit purpose into a for-profit purpose? What was that transition like, both individually and as co-founders moving into a new space, a new venture?
Yeah. So the good news is that we already knew we worked well together, and I think that that's unique. That's probably the biggest thing that I can look back on the success of really being able to found a second company, two companies with someone, is that we worked well together.
Mm.
And so I think we already were doing that. Like we had quit our jobs. The nonprofit, even though it's a nonprofit, had grown to the fact that we could actually quit what we were doing and focus on that full time. So we were already day in, day out being together, working on this project, and just kind of slowly shifting some of our focus to this new venture. So over the years of working on the nonprofit, we knew like the division of labor, like what I was good at, what he was good at.
Yeah.
And so it was easy to kind of take those divisions of labor and being able to say, here's, what you should be focused on for this next thing. And so I think that foundation made it a little easier to like ease into it versus like finding a new co-founder, quitting jobs, jumping into something, and like expecting that you can figure all that out instantaneously. And I attribute the fact that we were already working together as like a very easy transition into the next thing.
When I've worked with startups in the past, and I've started my own company, I've said most companies don't fail because of like lack of product market fit. You can refine and iterate to find product market fit with most places.
Yep.
Most of the companies that I saw fail was because of bad partnerships.
Yep.
Right. And Dan and I, my business partner and I, have been together for 15-ish years, and we still completely trust each other. It doesn't mean that it's like a marriage, right? Like it doesn't mean it's not hard. Like we still have to get together and say like, how did I piss you off this week? And how did you like, what did I do that was just subtle and petty, but ultimately like we want to do this thing together. I still want to like you. I still want to enjoy doing this thing together, but also starting a business is freaking hard for one person, let alone two people that might have different perspectives on how it should be done or what should we do. I'm curious, what was the division of responsibility between you and your co-founder? What were you good at that he wasn't, or what was he good at that you weren't, that allowed you to balance each other in that way? Because I see most co-founders that are really great aren't the same, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how would you define the way that you, at least early on, divided that kind of role and responsibility?
Yeah, and we'll get to it in a second, but then we have a third person that enters the mix a little bit
Oh yeah,
later,
cool.
and that's Joe. He was the tech counterpart to us. So, but for Chad and I, as we kind of transition from the nonprofit to the for-profit. By the way, the for-profit company is Diggs, and we'll get into like what it does
Yep.
shortly. But Chad and I came from a very similar background, so we had a similar way of thinking.
Hmm.
He too was an architecture graduate. I told you I met him in college, and so we already kind of had a similar way of like thinking about the world, similar education and the way we were literally taught. And but what he was good at is like he was a designer, so he could take
Yeah.
anything that you wanted to like articulate, put it on paper, make it look really really good, and also he was very familiar with how to market things. So like how to like kind of get out to consumers, like email marketing, and he was really quick at learning those things as well. For me, I was because of like my background with buying and selling buildings, I had a little bit more business focus, like how things are going to run,
Yeah.
how things need to operate, and that operation component, I had to kind of fill that gap. But I also was really, I think, really really good at articulating myself. I say that as I did a horrible job at articulating
It's
articulation.
okay. It's all right. Different
But
context. Yeah.
yeah, but that really made it clear that I was the one to kind of go out there, articulate the vision of what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
He was going to take that vision, articulate in pen, paper, and visuals on how we're going to like actually build this thing, and then together we kind of had a really good way of like displaying what we're thinking to external and internal partners. The one thing that was missing, and we recognized that, was we didn't have a very, very strong tech counterpart,
Hmm.
um, because we weren't engineers by trade. We
Yep.
didn't like learn that. And so we bootstrapped our first business, which I think before I get to introducing Joe, our third co-founder, I think it's probably important now to like kind of get into what the business did.
Yeah. What's Dick? Tell me more about Dick. Like, what was it? Why
Yeah.
that? Why then?
Yep. So I kind of insinuated that a lot of people were asking me about buying buildings and how I was able to do that. So the idea behind Diggs was there was this lack of knowledge about buying your first property for millennials. And keep in mind, this is 2017. So much has transpired since
Sure.
2017
Yeah.
in the world. And so it was this idea that they don't know how much they need to save. They also have a lack of knowledge about the buying process, and they maybe haven't even saved that much to begin with. So, Diggs was a savings app for first-time homebuyers where you could save for a home in a dedicated FDIC-insured savings account. And as you were putting away money, we would spoon-feed you information about closing costs and how to buy a home, and kind of like make it an interactive process. And the more you saved and the more you interacted with the app, you would earn rewards. And those rewards would accumulate in your account, and we would partner with mortgage lenders who would then give those rewards back to you when you're ready to buy a home. So it was kind of a
Interesting.
win-win
Yeah.
because the consumer had this dedicated place to save for a home, earn more rewards. The lender would get a very qualified person to buy a home, and in return, they give them some credit back, which they were doing already in many cases for a lot of their clients.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but in some ways it's kind of a two-sided marketplace, right? Because you
Exactly.
had to go recruit the institutions, the banks, the financial side of it, kind of convince them, hey, we're building a marketplace of potential, buyers that are going to take loans from you, which is good for you. But then you had to turn around and at the same time build up a user base that says, hey, I have these financial institutions that want to work with you and are going to give you these perks. There's a reason you
Yep.
should use our platform. What was the early days of kind of trying to build up both sides of that marketplace?
You already mentioned it that finding product market fit is something you can do, and that was not product market fit.
Fair
Building the
enough.
two sides at the same time was not the way to go, but we quickly figured that out. Is that the way you understood it was exactly how we launched, is two-sided marketplace. But the lenders themselves, as we were talking to them, we started to realize that they actually were interested in like white labeling our product and
Oh
using it
yeah.
more as like a tool for them to retain customers that they meet early in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of just getting highly qualified leads, they were actually interested in distributing their entire funnel of people that maybe weren't ready to buy or getting close to being able to buy. And so we shifted the focus to instead build the product for them. So we allowed them to brand the product and distribute it to the people that they were meeting. And this kind of came up when you're fundraising. You're talking. We actually had a successful launch. Several thousand people quickly started saving for a home. But
Awesome.
as I went out to like talk to VCs and get funding, a lot of them were like, "How are you going to get to 1 million users?" And I didn't have a good answer. Like the reality is, I didn't. But once we made this shift, I did. Like there's X
Distribution
number of
channels.
there's X number of
Yeah.
lenders. They have this many people in their funnel. They're willing to distribute it for these reasons. And that's the distribution that we ultimately went with.
How did you keep from being a custom development shop for each bank?
That's a really good question. We decided to I think we call it gray label instead of white label, which is that the portal was always Diggs.
Okay.
And we would essentially co-brand with them. So their logo would be
Good.
alongside of ours, instead of just completely, we didn't want 100 versions of Diggs in the app store. So that was really what we decided to do. And then so that kind of like, I think that now we can bring back Joe into the equation. It's like, so we launched our product, and kind of got to this initial place that I have mentioned, but we needed this. We actually outsourced a lot of the dev work to begin with. We really footed the bill and kind of made the initial like investments ourselves. But we realized we needed someone from the tech side. And so we were asking around in our network. One of our friends, who was a VC, has a brother, and he was saying, hey, yeah, he might be interested. And so we got Joe Ahern, is his name, to do us like some contract work. And we're like, hey, go fix these bugs that we're seeing, and he just killed it. Like he did all the work, but then he also made all these recommendations. He went above and beyond, and you could just tell he was like someone that like would just fit well with us. And
the difference of outsourcing versus having someone who's invested.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we wanted someone that was invested, that cared about the product, that would make recommendations and not just do what what's being asked.
Yeah.
But go above and beyond, and also like challenge us in a way. Like, and that's something that we needed, is like we needed someone to say, hey, you're doing it wrong. And so yeah, like Joe entered the mix, I would say 6 months or so after like Diggs was launched. We got our initial funding, and we just needed that third co-founder. So very happy to have that balance. Now we had Chad and myself and Joe to kind of like the three legs of the stool, to really build the company from that point forward.
And almost every tech founder group, or even internal entrepreneur type groups, those are the three that I'm always saying. Like, do you have someone who's overseeing kind of the product or business side of things? Do you have someone who's the creative genius that can kind of connect the user's needs to the potential feature sets of what we're trying to do? And then you have that technical, at least leadership or oversight. Honestly, that's what I built my company on. It was from a service standpoint, is we were always thinking about what is the product design and technology. Those three were always in play, because it's so many organizations think, I just need a dev.
Yep.
Or I just need a business person and they'll figure it out, or we can outsource or whatever. But that trifecta, that's the sweet spot. That's that trio that's really hard to get right. But when you do, it's off to the races.
Yep. And I agree. I mean, in many cases, I have to attribute some luck to some of the things that like happen to be able to find those three people and get them all working in the same direction. So.
Let's take a break to tell you about our sponsor this week, Crema, a design and technology consultancy. At Crema, we know that navigating through periods of rapid change and scaling can be daunting. Broken systems, misaligned teams, delivery delays, and gaps in customer engagement are just some of the challenges that can arise when growing like this. That's where Crema steps in. Crema acts as a trusted partner, helping you overcome these hurdles on your journey to becoming a tech-enabled organization. Crema is excited to announce 3 new services designed to empower your product teams. You may have heard of the product triangle: design, product, and technology. Well, we're excited to help you navigate all 3. First is our UX audit. This isn't just a review, it's a deep dive into the user experience to uncover transformative insights that serve as a blueprint for greater success. Next is our team assessment. This service helps you identify the strengths and gaps in your product team, arming you with the knowledge to excel. And finally, a code quality assessment. It's essential to ensure that your technology is not just working, but thriving. Our experts will enhance your code base to improve performance, security, and scalability. Ready to get the most out of your existing product teams? Visit crema.us today and learn how Crema's new services can help you navigate your biggest challenges. Now back to the show. Okay, so tell me go forward in the story then. So you've got digs in the marketplace. You're starting to find product market fit, a distribution channel with these financial institutions. You've got your trio of leaders that are going to be overseeing the kind of different pieces of this. I know that it ends up selling, or at least ends up exiting. Tell me that story of what it was like to grow that, or to kind of go through that stage of the different iterations or the cycles of what is a startup.
Yeah. So as we shifted kind of to this approach where we work with the lenders instead of just having them be, our lead acceptors, really was like we started to learn about their needs more and more. And so what we would see is that a lot of them were meeting people early in the funnel that hadn't bought a home yet. And those people would eventually buy a home and then, use the lender. But then if you think about it, the lender doesn't have a need for a product anymore for that specific user. And the user doesn't need a savings app for a home after they're a homeowner. So we actually recognized that there was this huge opportunity on the other side after you become a homeowner to continue to provide financial guidance with life's biggest asset. Saving for a home was where it started. That's a challenge. It's a big purchase. Like saving that amount and learning about the process is hard. But then once you become a homeowner, a whole new set of challenges arise. It's like maintaining your home. What's the best time to refinance? How do you maximize? What's pulling out a HELOC look like? All of those questions. A lot of new homeowners aren't equipped yet. So what we did is Diggs now added a second product, Diggs for homeowners, and that product ended up being wildly more successful than the savings app. And so that was like one of those things that the savings app is what kind of got us on the map, but there was a lot of friction involved. You have to essentially connect the bank account. You have to start setting up recurring deposits. You have to earn rewards. You have to then decide to use those rewards with the lender. It's like a lot of breakage in that funnel.
And there's a lot of risk with compliance and other things from, you've got to probably check some boxes that were hard to check.
100%. We had to go through the process of getting SOC 2 certified. It's a whole thing that being a fintech product does come with a lot of risk and compliance concerns as well. The homeowner product was a lot easier though. Like all you had to do is give us your address and we'll use a lot of public record information about what's your home's value. We can usually look up and find your mortgage, and we can do some amortization to figure out what's likely your balance. And we could then take where it is in the geography and say, here's your maintenance, reminders on here's what you should do. And there's just a lot of things that we could do without asking a lot of information or a lot of, contributions from the user itself. And so that made the onboarding really easy. And it also made the onboarding for the lender really easy. They could essentially upload everyone who they sold a home to in the last year to our platform, and then start sending them home reports on what's their home's value and is it a good time to refinance. And then those refinance leads would go back to them, of course, as ways that they can grow their business. So that product ended up being much more successful, which led us to the next round of funding. And so we went out to go fundraise, and we're raising, what would be equivalent nowadays to a seed round, I guess.
Yep. Because you bootstrapped to this point. Have you raised it all at this point?
We had raised these names.
Friends and family.
Yeah, you could call it friends and family, pre-seed. I don't know what we had raised $500,000.
Means different things to different people, but I'm following you. Okay, got it.
So $500,000 is nowadays, I think, a smaller number, but that was what we had raised to date, and we were going.
And you've accomplished a lot in $500,000. It's incredible.
Oh yeah. We were definitely we used the resources very well.
The nonprofit days taught you a lot of how to be resource conscious.
Yes. And so now we're kind of going out there, and when you're fundraising, you talk to a lot of people. You do. And so we during all of our conversations got introduced to the CEO of this company called Ojo. John Berkowitz was his name and is his name. And John is initially I'm trying to sell him the partnership, he loves what we're doing though, and quickly turns it around and is like, hey, come work, for us.
And this was Ojo. Yeah,
exactly. And it was enticing. We definitely weren't in the mindset of selling, but the ideas that were out there, just it seemed to make sense. It was one of those 1 + 1 = 3 type of scenarios. Is they had just purchased a search portal that was getting millions of monthly active users. So like a equivalent of a Zillow. It's called Movoto, and that portal allowed us to distribute to millions of people every single month our product, which we hadn't done before. Lenders, like, we were distributing to a couple thousand at a time, but this was like a huge opportunity. And for them, they were in this process of like, real estate's very transactional. You
Hmm.
buy a home and then you're off the portal.
Yeah.
But with our product, we kind of serve the moments outside the transaction. So you think about integrating digs into the Movoto ecosystem, and you have a product that is a life cycle product where you meet a consumer. Maybe they're not ready to buy. You help them get ready to buy. You help them find a home. You help them stay a homeowner. And then when they're ready to sell, you help them sell. And the whole process became more of like a life cycle product instead of a transactional product.
Yeah.
So
Huge, which has longer lifetime value. And yeah, absolutely. That's incredible.
so it made a lot of sense. And we, through conversations, decided, this was one of those opportunities that we thought was the right time. And so
How long had you been, had the company existed at this point? How long had you been going?
I would say approximately, from the bootstrap days to now, it was approximately 3 years.
Oh, okay. Great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was not like super short, but it was also like we weren't like dragging along, like, still like 5, 6 years in of like trying to get something, to work. It was definitely, like, I think, a time that we had it to make a decision. Now keep in mind, this was also COVID. This is a time that we're like,
Mm-hmm.
fundraising was, it was all, everything was like, we're not sure, like, do we
Yeah. Everything was
raise, like,
weird.
yeah, you don't know. Like, so we're like, we could definitely close this round, but what does that mean in a year? Like, what does this look like? And what's real estate look like? What's all these things? And so
Mm,
that was a decision that we were like weighing out some of the, like, the timing of everything is really
yeah.
important. So
Yeah. I'm curious. So I want to push pause on kind of the business journey cycle. Because a lot of folks that are in that early stage, and we're seeing kind of this resurgence of startups hitting again with AI and everything kind of bringing back into the, like, people want to build things again. There'd been kind of a little bit of a lull, I think,
yep.
coming out of COVID into the, like, we're not sure, M&A is weird, VC funding's weird. But so I think some of our audience is thinking about this right now. At this point, you're 2 or 3 years in, you've got two products. One, is your kind of go-to-market strategy. One is now your scaling strategy. I'm curious, what does your team look like at this point? You still have the trio, the founders, I assume.
Yeah.
And have you hired up at this point? Or are you still contracting? And I think this is just kind of a very practical question of what is it like to look to, you're now doing things that you're touching potentially millions of users, potentially starting to kind of at least thousands or tens of thousands of users. What does it look like to have a team that can support that and that can scale
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, that was the other thing. It's not just the top of funnel that I mentioned, like meeting like millions of people every single month. Now we have a team behind us. So we had a whole team of engineers that were already building when we got acquired, like this whole team that now is kind of at our disposal. And a
Yeah.
lot of the things that we were kind of like thinking about, very like, we have to prioritize this or this, and like cost conscious, like, how much does this API cost us per month? Like,
Yeah.
those still exist. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but it
No,
became a little
I'm there. I get it. Yeah,
yeah, it
totally.
became a little easier for us to be like, okay, now we can be in the growth mindset,
Yeah.
and now we can build some of the features that we've been putting on hold for a long time. And so when I entered Ojo, I think that I immediately had a level of like influence and street cred that I think that just a random hire wouldn't get. You got acquired, you're coming into the company with a new
Yep.
role, and so I was able to, I think, pretty quickly influence some of the direction of like where the company was headed. Kind of like the life cycle value of a customer versus the transactional value of the customer,
Totally.
which led to a lot of like what products are being built, how we're articulating the value props to the consumers, and so it was nice to have essentially the ability to take some of the ideas that I was articulating to either VCs or my team, articulate them to different teams within my organization, and almost like cross-functionally decide on a strategy that we would have a lot of resources behind. And
Yeah.
so
So
that
you can
was
now, you have an
nice.
orchestration in play and you can actually
Exactly.
start to see more. Yeah. I know the early days. I'm doing a joint venture right now, kind of getting back into it again. And there's that, like, man, there's so much we want to do.
Yep.
But we are forced to make hard decisions, which in some ways is brilliant at the beginning. But then you do want to get to this point where, like, we need to start delivering on our promises at a level, at a speed and a level, and that we couldn't do at this stage, but hopefully we'll get to either through partnering or through acquisition or through growth. Yeah. So you're now a part of this larger organization, resourced up. You've got the influence. what does that look like now being the once founder, now
Product.
integrated,
Yeah.
yeah, product
Yeah.
lead?
Yeah.
What is that transition like? I mean, that's hard. That's an identity crisis in some way, to go from like every decision is my decision
Yep.
to now my decision has to be in concert with bigger decisions that the organization's strategy is based off of.
Yeah, definitely. When I made the transition, like product just felt right to me. There's operations, you could go that route, but I was always interested in, even though like Chad was handling a little bit more of it, like building the product, designing the product, how does it interact with the users, marketing the product, and that was always something that like really my background with architecture, design, you know,
You
that
were
was what it,
basically doing product, not calling it product.
exactly. So I, joining that company and being able to take a product role, I think that a lot of the learnings that you do when you're a founder and you're kind of convincing VCs, here's what the direction we're taking and here's why we're taking it, and then articulating that to your team, it's not too different from convincing stakeholders at different parts of the company. Here's what
Yep.
we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. Convincing your team and articulating to the engineers, like, here's what we're building. Here's why we're building it. So it actually, like, I think it was pretty easy to make the transition to product from being a founder. And it also gave me, I think, a little bit more headspace to focus on the product versus worrying about payroll and administrative stuff and like some of the stuff that is someone has to do it at the
The things
company.
that you think about at 3 o'clock in the morning, you no longer have to think about anymore. Right.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
so like
totally.
those things, exactly when you're thinking about it,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
exactly. I know.
So that's I think I think a little bit of relief to have that ability to kind of focus on product a little bit more.
Sure.
And I think I've stuck with that as I kind of grew within that company. Eventually became in charge of like all the consumer experience on Movoto, led a number of PMs that were each doing different things. And the product evolved during that time period to include more homeowner features because of our homeowner product.
Mm-hmm.
We attracted more sellers because now we have people retaining in the product. And so there was a lot of things that I influenced in that company. And I was there for 4 years before I just recently, I think this past, 9 months, decided to move on. And now I'm at a new company.
So, okay. So we've gone from nonprofit. Well, we went from like humanitarian work to nonprofit to starting the for-profit to first product bootstrapped to second product seeing scale, getting ready to think about raising, but also ultimately deciding this is the time to actually go through acquisition.
Yep.
We see that acquisition take place, and then you've been with this company for 4 years and just recently have transitioned.
Yep.
That's a wild ride. And honestly, I think that goes back to what you said at the very beginning, which is that there's no straight or clear path into product.
Exactly.
I've talked to people that have gone from a journalistic background into product, from an engineering background into product, from a design background into product. And ultimately, yours coming through this entrepreneur kind of project management operations, you were already doing product, but not calling it product. Now I'm curious. Now you've stepped away from your baby, touching a product that you've been a part of from the very beginning. What's it like to step into a product role, a product leadership role, even inside of an organization that already has something, and now you're influencing something that's already got momentum and growth? What's that transition been like as you stepped over into your new organization?
Yeah. So when I was looking for my role, I was very conscious of like what type of role I was looking for the exact reason that you just mentioned is like, working at a very large company, let's call it like an Amazon,
Yeah.
it just wouldn't probably be the right fit. It would be like I would be another like peg in this system, and then I could obviously work for another startup and have a lot of, but I think the thing that was like really interesting was MoneyLion is the name of the company I work at now. Is they're a public company, but they operate at a speed and kind of like thought process of a startup.
Super
And so
cool.
yeah,
Very
so just
rare, honestly. Very rare.
very rare. And I found that out as I was interviewing, kind of learning about like the velocity that they were releasing products, the way that they were thinking about like the future. And to me, it felt like a great opportunity to come in and influence that product, an at scale product, a profitable product, and be able to really find a spot at a company that was also fintech focused, which is where I came from.
Sure. So you've got that context, you got that awareness, you know what the
100%.
hard parts are and the easy parts are. Yeah.
Yep.
Mostly hard
So
parts, probably.
and I was actually really interested in getting back to fintech anyways, because the company that I told you acquired us, Ojo, was a prop tech company, like property
Oh, yeah,
technology.
sure.
So like I had built a fintech product, got acquired by prop tech. Now prop tech and fintech are very similar.
There's a lot
Right?
of overlap. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
overlap. and I had introduced a lot of features that were fintech focused in the prop tech company. However, like getting back to fintech was a goal of mine, and so that was another reason that attracted me to this. Now, I think your question was really how did you kind of like adapt to being at this new company?
Yeah.
So I had mentioned earlier, like the Ojo, like I kind of had the street cred off the bat. Like you
Yeah.
jump in
Yeah.
and you have that because you're being acquired. You kind of get that by default. At MoneyLion, you know, not that you have to like that I didn't have it, but like I had to kind of prove myself a little bit. Now,
Yeah.
luckily,
Nobody
like
knows you from anybody else. You're fresh. Yeah.
exactly. Now, luckily, like high expectations coming in, what you can do, and like I think that like getting those early wins under my belt, like being part of some early successes on making some changes to the product, being on some product lines that are growing and influencing the direction of that they are growing has really been helpful in kind of being able to say, okay, I can do more of this. I want to have a more of a responsibility in there. And I do have a lot of responsibility here at the company that I'm working for now.
I think what's interesting is this word kept coming up as you described your journey, and that's influence, right? You talked about whether that is the influence that you had or between you and your partner, or the influence that you had as you try to figure out the trio, or the influence that you had when you were trying to figure out that early product market fit, and all the way into the influence you had coming into an organization, but having the street cred that you had from previous. What has it been like to build up that trust and that influence inside of an organization that you are net new to, but ultimately you're having to build those relationships quickly, because this is about people, right?
Yep.
You're trying to say, here's why my voice matters in the room, here's why my perspective or context might be important or useful. What has that influence been like going into a new organization like this?
So I feel like I do get animated in the way I describe things. I get excited about the projects I'm working on. If I ever stop getting excited, then I think that's pretty evident in just the way I probably am conducting myself. So I think coming in and being excited about things and being able to like kind of have this outlook on like here's what something could be kind of is uplifting to someone who maybe has been working at the company for several years and like maybe
Mm,
has lost some of that excitement. So I
yeah,
think coming in off the bat, being able to take on new challenges and like really get excited about them is the starting point. But as I
that's
mentioned, you got
good.
to get some early successes too. And so I think that like being on some projects that participating in them has helped them grow much faster, maybe like really like take off in the company, has kind of proven okay, you know what you're saying, and like this is a great thing that you're here. And I think that like what I want is I want to continue to take that influence and like just keep leveling it up because that influence when you start out is about influencing your team
Yeah,
and
yeah.
someone that or influencing a co-founder like that's where it starts. Then it's like how you influence the engineers and the other product leaders that are around you. Then it's cross-functional collaboration and influencing all those people. And then it becomes really a strategic, like influencing the direction of the entire company and how product flywheels can really grow a company drastically by tying together pieces of the company that you typically wouldn't tie together. And
Hmm.
you have to be able to articulate how something on this side of the business, which has never even considered this side of the business, growth in this realm can actually result in a lot of growth in the other realm. And being able to articulate that is, I think, where I found a lot of success.
I what you just described, I refer to as constellations, and the reality is like we look up at the stars, and people for ancient of days have looked up at the stars and said, "Man, there seems to be some patterns there," and then they turned those patterns into shapes, and shapes became kind of these, pantheon of gods, basically. And I think it's interesting that I think a great product person, or specifically a great product leader, is able to connect the dots.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, I can see that this is going to affect other parts of the business, the strategy inside the business. I can see how these cross-functional teams ought to be working more closely together, or I can see how we need to connect maybe that third-party partner into what we're doing now. And a great product person can see that when no one else can.
Yep.
And I think then you saying it's not only just about cheerleading the idea, which is part of it. We should be championing and getting people excited about it, but also like, yeah, but we have to execute and prove that there's value there.
Yep.
And it sounds like you've found at least, and again, I think that's an art and a science. I don't know that there's any way to like specifically train somebody like here's the 6 steps to do that effectively, but I think that is when keeping those things in mind of going, how do we bring those to the table, not scare everybody every time you bring a new idea to the table, but ultimately invite them into that process. That sounds like something you've gotten really good at.
Yeah, and I have never heard that constellation analogy, but I like it.
Okay, cool. So
Yeah,
you can take that still, run with it.
cool.
Okay, so I
I'll
want to
take
pivot a little
that.
bit as we wrap up. Throughout your journey, as you've been either in the founder role or in the product role, or as you're shaping new products or enhancing existing products, where do you think that is either in your role or working along Jason, or even just having conversations, talking shop with other folks over dinner or whatever, where do you feel like people get it wrong? Where do you feel like they really struggle to say, like, your intent is good here, but you're just missing the mark?
Yeah, I don't think it's actually that controversial anymore, what I'm about to say.
Okay.
But it's really just like that the idea is very little of like success. Like it's really about the distribution, how you execute it. And I think a lot of founders are really protective of the idea at the beginning. And I think that's a little silly. I might have been at some point in time. I probably was. But I think even during this conversation, I articulated some of the reasons for the acquisition, some of the reasons why the homeowner product took off and the saver was not as successful. Some of those things it's just all distribution. And even my successes at MoneyLion are very much tied to having a user base of millions of monthly active users that like I can, distribute a product through. Like I can build something that I know the user base, I know about them, I know kind of like what financial products they're already using. Here's a product that could help. And doing the 0 to 1 is the hard part. But like once you get at that distribution, then it really becomes successful. So
I was talking to somebody about this actually literally this morning, and the same conversation came up that I think that that's even going to be more important than ever as building product gets easier than ever with kind of the tools and the resources that we have coming into the marketplace, whether it's
yep.
AI assistance or being able to, find a worldwide network of folks that can build product that, when we started, I was 2007, 2008, more 2009, just, a year before you. Like there wasn't very many people doing this.
Yeah.
And now you have a whole world of people that have been trained on how to do it, plus AI that's supposedly going to make it easier for us to do it and maybe do it at speed. Building product's not going to be the hard part. It's
Yep.
finding distribution channels, connecting product to market fit or product to user fit. It's actually going to be the harder thing to do at scale, I think.
Yep. Agreed. Very
Okay.
much.
So then with that being said, looking ahead, what are you excited about? I always like to end on a high note. What's something that you say, whether it's at MoneyLion or in your own personal product journey or in the market as a whole, what's something you're ahead going, I see this coming in my space or in the world. I'm getting pumped.
Yeah, I'm really excited about 2025 at MoneyLion. The direction that the company is taking, although I can't really get into too much
Sure.
details,
Yeah, I get it.
it kind of goes back to what I was just saying though about tying different products together. Um, MoneyLion's gone through an evolution over the last several years. A lot of first-party products in the past, like think about traditional fintech, open a savings account, get a cash advance, you know, um, those type of products were what MoneyLion was known for. They're shifting to more of a marketplace where you
Yeah.
can, do a lot of different things. You can shop for credit cards, you can, get personal loans, you can do a lot of different things on MoneyLion. And the personalization, some of the rewards that we have for these consumers, it's tying together all of these pieces of the product to create an experience that really I think is a valuable one that I'm excited to kind of tie together those dots in 2025. So um, I think you'll see the MoneyLion product really evolve in 2025 more than it has in the past, and I think a lot of that is what's like probably what I'm excited about the most. But
That's
on a
great.
personal note, actually, the thing I'm also excited about is I'm new to New York. I moved here about 4 months ago, and my wife and I are really excited to just like explore the city, like
It's
do
such a
things. Yeah.
great spot. I
So
love that city. Although it's like the most crowded space to feel like you're so small. Like it's
yeah,
like, wow, there's just a ton of people, but the energy, the vibe of that place is second to none. That's
yeah.
awesome.
And we came
Congrats.
from Chicago, so it wasn't like a huge jump to get there, but it's fun to have all these new places to go to and new things to try. So that's more of a personal note, but that's another thing I'm looking forward to.
Very cool. Well, first off, Pat, thank you so much for telling your story. And I think that there's some authenticity. That's the word I'm looking for. There's that authenticity to, there's good times, there's hard times. There's the, I think we know what we're doing. And then there's better ways to do it. And it's never a straight path. Even if it is slightly from the kind of, gosh, notifications, even if it's slightly from the bottom, left going to the upper right. If you were to zoom in on anybody's journey, it's a lot of up and down all the way there.
Yep.
And I think that a lot of people are going to learn from your story and hopefully take that to apply it to their own. So thank you for sharing that. And thanks for the intentionality of your work. That's the one thing I always like to encourage people. I think product people, desire to do intentional good work. And it sounds like that's who you are. So I appreciate your intentionality there. So
yeah, thank you.
With that being said, I want to roll out the red carpet for you. Where can people learn more about you, your organization, or just connect with you in general?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter, so you can search me. I don't have my handles handy,
All right,
but
it's
just
okay.
just Google Pat McLoughlin, add fintech at the end if you need to kind of whittle it down a little bit more, and you can find me. Working for MoneyLion, awesome company. Check it out. Building some really cool things in 2025. So, yeah,
love it. Well, Pat, thanks for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks a lot.
People of Product is brought to you by Crema, a design consultancy that helps forward-thinking leaders discover, understand, and execute on their greatest opportunities. Learn more at crema.us.